And we are live with the Enterprise Month in Review. Brian and I had to call an audible there on our planning for our next event because we got a good one today. Brian, how you doing?
Doing fine. I now have electricity back in my office, so
Oh,
it's
right. That's really going to help our show, I
the
would
day
say.
is turning around. Thanks.
Really going to help our show. So, hey, if you're watching this, especially on LinkedIn, can you let me know that the stream's coming through okay? And if for some reason you're having any stream issues, I know there are some stream issues on X today. I can pop you the LinkedIn, the YouTube link as well. We got an extra special show today because we got the real deal on agentic AI new book. Let me just show you the whole agenda. Brian's infamous slide deck ready to go. Brian, what do we got, man?
So we've got actually multiple cringy buzzwords we're going to talk about briefly here in just a moment. Yeah, you and I are going to go through our top three stories, and since I took a peek at yours, I'm pleasantly surprised. Well, hello there, Thomas. Pleasantly surprised that a couple of you and I are coming at some of the same points with a couple of different pieces. We got should be a really interesting halftime. Andreas Welsch will be here. Um, I think it'll be a real grab you by the shirt collar kind of AI discussion. Got a whiff or two in there that we're going to cover, and that's about it. It'll be a fast hour, that's for sure. John.
Yeah, I'm feeling for Andreas here because he thinks we're going to do a book launch celebration. We're going to grill him, but it's going to be fun, and I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah. So hello, Thomas. Glad to see you. Glad the stream's coming fine. And Paul, it's nice to see you. It's been a little while. Those of you who track Enterprise AI should be tracking these guys as well. So it looks like we're going to have a very informed, high signal conversation today. Brian and I don't really compare a lot of notes ahead of time, so I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but we do start with our cringy
It's just
buzzwords.
That's just like at a software user conference.
It
You have
is.
no idea what question I'm going to ask.
No, no.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but one of the analysts at last week's event actually walked up to me at the start of day two and said, "It's good to see the old Brian back in action again," based on a question I asked of the
The old
execs.
Brian, yeah, the old dreaded rule of 40. All right, Brian, what you got there?
So we got like three of these little buzzword things. I hate this word, this phygital, or however you want to pronounce it. But that's its definition. Anything all the listeners can do to help kill that term as quickly as possible, I'd be eternally indebted to you. But that's one of them there. Unless you have a comment, John, all I will say is PR peeps don't send me press releases with that term in it. But anyway.
Yeah, somewhere Olivia Newton-John is rolling over with the old fidgetal. Let's get fidgetal. I don't think that really works. All right.
That's a good one. Someone popped this one towards me about Nathan Myhrvold's old comment about software as a gas that expands to fill its container. And I've heard similar analogies to freeways over the years, but the new way of looking at that comment is to substitute the word AI in for software. So AI is a gas that expands to fill its container. Boy, are we seeing that now. It's assuming all kinds of budget space that a lot of companies have set aside for other IT functions. So there's that one. And I think we have one more, a little bit longer here. This is one that actually was making the rounds last month, but I thought it was, I couldn't help going for it. It's microslop. It's all the,
Yep.
well, you guys know it. I don't need to talk about it. Ed Bott, I want to give a hat tip to him over at ZDNet. He put a whole story together around this stuff. So those are some of the words. You don't need to use them. And we point them out to you so people don't use them going forward. Anyway.
I have a feeling that's not the last we're going to hear of slop during this conversation today. But yeah, I just purged some microslop from my computer last night, and it's running a lot better. And hi, Shashi. It's nice to see you there. Shashi should also be tracked. Running a lot of good video of late. Look forward to seeing you soon. If I can just actually remove that from the timeline, though. All right, and now my top stories. So look, we gotta run through these because I really want to get to our our featured guest. But this one, I could have picked gosh knows how many stories that have been written on Diginomica and elsewhere on the death of SaaS versus AI. But I think Larry Dignan, who's been around the block a few times in this industry over at Constellation, I think he kind of nailed it down here a little bit in terms of that. Yeah, it's an illogical storyline, the death of SaaS for sure. Uh, but at the same time, like there is a margin compression issue that has actually been going back kind of a long time. Um, Ray Wong over at Constellation's been talking margin compression for a long time, and I think it's kind of helpful to understand that one of while I think the markets are really loopy right now, one of the things they're doing with AI is they're kind of poking at the value proposition for different things. Now, sometimes AI can't do the things to replace the things. So that's the funny part. I don't think you can really build AI to replace sophisticated SaaS applications in compliance industries, for example. But it doesn't hurt to have a healthy conversation about why these markets are being disrupted. And, when you look at the disruption of like research firms or SaaS or consulting, one of the things you say is, man, these firms kind of should have been working on this self disruption for a long time before that. So, that's the thing with margin compression is you can't relax into it. AI is keeping us on our toes, if nothing else, Brian. And I think that's the big lesson from this story.
I liked, it's a short story. I recommend people read it. There's a link in here somewhere for it. And anyway, what I was going to say is the compression deal is a very serious point. And to show, I guess, a flip to this, I was fascinated at Zoho's event last week because they hit I think it was their millionth customer and like their 15 millionth user or some number like that. Don't quote me on it. But I know they have 1 million customers now. And think about that. They get there because they keep the cost structure so low. Their sales cost is so low. Customer acquisition cost is ridiculously low. And I can go on and on and on. They are economically well suited to make it through any kind of disruption waves that hit the application software market simply because of the strength of how they engineered so many parts of their business to get through this. So this is definitely a good article to read on the margin compression because there's some really telling stories in there from some of the other vendors, but realize that there are some other options or other alternate stories out in the market as well.
Well, and just real quick, I don't want to turn this into a Zoho show, but the instructive thing about this vendor is that maintaining profitability, but also Sridhar Vebbu has been talking about software becoming free or a commodity for a long time and planning accordingly. And so that's kind of my whole point. Is it any wonder that they're doing pretty well because they've been talking about this for a long time and preparing for this day. And also they can play the long game. I talked to a vendor recently and I said, if you can play your long game, it's going to work out for you, but I'm worried about the markets and the market fluctuations and how distracting that's going to be to you internally. And I think that's a really, really big issue. Shashi,
Yeah.
your question on LLMs, that's a good one. I'm going to hold that for our guest, Andreas. He can field that. So, Andreas, I think you're backstage. Make a note of that question. We're going to return to it when you're on. Yes, indeed.
You're
Thomas.
right, Thomas. It is 150 million. Yep.
And by the way, by coincidence, both Brian and Thomas did a podcast with me on Zoho, different podcasts. So check those out. Do a search or find me later. Okay, so moving on. Let's pick up the pace here a little. Okay, another one from Constellation. This one from Esteban on context graphs. And it's kind of a grouchy post as you would expect from Esteban Kolsky, Esteban is always in the running for the chief enterprise grouch. But actually, he's really been digging into context and criticizing it, but also talking about why it's important. In case people haven't followed it closely, there's been an explosion of posts around the importance of context to decision making and LLM agents, and how we have to really rethink context at inference time and expand the nature of what context looks like. Because so often there's personal signals and signals in unstructured data, signals in your email, all kinds of, it's called signals in this lingo, but basically everything that you need to make a decision. And can you rethink that a little bit instead of thinking like, oh, we're just going to rely on one source of context, like our SAS system or whatever. That you need a lot more than that and a richer thing. And so context graphs are in right now, and Esteban's kind of saying it's much bigger than just graphs. So, Brian, unless you have a comment on that, I'll just plug on.
Go.
Okay, and here comes a real rarity. I'm actually featuring a vendor page in this. This is from Causal Lens. They're a causal AI vendor. I don't want to get into an AI deep dive right now, but causal AI is fascinating because in some large language models don't understand causality, and I think a lot of people don't understand that. They understand correlation, and there's a really huge difference. So, for example, LLMs actually don't understand necessarily that smoking causes cancer, for example. Like, they know the relationship between the two, but in an LLM, it's a two-way relationship. Now, granted, it's been trained so many times on the phrase smoking causes cancer that it's generally going to get that right. But but cognitively speaking, it doesn't understand the difference. And so, for example, in the study of causality, which goes before AI, you look at, for example, in that case, there's what's called the confounding variable, which is genotype. So the human genome influences smoking and cancer, tendency to get addicted to cigarettes, etc. So the confounding variable is a hidden variable. So what's cool about causal AI is that it surfaces those things. So I wanted to encourage people to check this out. It's one of the best explanations I've seen around this. I'm taking a course on it right now. But what it does is it gives you a really good basis for criticizing large language models, but also understanding how they can be improved, because you can construct things like quote unquote causal graphs and include that in the so-called context you feed to a language model to help it to get a better handle on what causality looks like. But causality is everything when you're trying to make good decisions, Brian, because if you don't know the reason for your customer churn, you're just making guesses. And the same is true in a lot of medical things and everything else.
So I wholeheartedly recommend people read this. And this, if I remember right, this and the previous piece you just were talking about from Constellation, I think are two good bookends to study. And I think it was this story had examples of like pictures of cattle in different environments. So if you saw a picture of a cow in a grassy field, well, then it could pretty much guess that is a cow because it's got the right context or whatever in there. But if you go one step further and you show it near a lake, but there's still greenery and trees, then it goes, that's still a cow. But if you put the cow on a beach, then the AI stuff goes bonkers because it can't figure that out. It doesn't realize that there should have been looking at some other factors, not just is there grass or pasture or whatever, in figuring that out. So there's some great stuff in here. It's an easy, fast read, as was the Constellation piece a moment ago. But I think it's important that we all understand why the AI capabilities can be so limited, because the technology doesn't understand, to your point, it doesn't understand causality, and it doesn't recognize, like in the example where the cancer gene, it was a genotype question. Well, we need to look at some other factors before we can make a great decision about what we're actually seeing in front of us. Anyway, enough of that.
Yep, I'm taking a course, Brent. I'm racking up the AI certifications. I hope they'll be worth something on eBay someday. Tracy, great to see you. Haven't seen you in a little bit. You're always a welcome voice in our chats and discussions. All right, Brian, I want to get Andreas on, so
Oh,
let's plow through your stories. What you got?
okay. So this one was this is a piece that I thought was a well done one to explain all the move towards these screenless, headless, whatever kind of app development. And it's one subject I never hear vendors talk about. I have to ask questions to get the subject to even come up. And I think they're trying so desperately to hang on to their install base right now. They're not talking about this. So I'll leave it up to the audience to read this. It was an NFX piece, but it's a well done one on on where this is going, and in particular, the article's main focus are on the startups and how they're not even going to bother building anything like the traditional apps that we have. They're building for a completely different kind of world, and they're not trying to marry it up with the past. So that's what caught my eye.
Roger that.
The next one was this Fortune article, and this is a cautionary one. It's not that I'm risk averse. I don't go for all the rah, rah, rah of a new technology just because it's new. I always see and look out for things that are troublesome. This lady that wrote the article, or that the article is about, is a big shot in AI, and she thought she was being real clever using some tools to automate a big chunk of her day. And it turned out, when you read all the way through this, that all her collection of AI tools basically, instead of managing her calendar, just went in and chewed it up and got rid of it. And it was because it lost its instructions along the way. So not only do we have to worry with hallucinations, we have to worry about AI bots or whatever that turn around and forget why they
She's
exist and
she's
what they're
that
doing.
she's the head of alignment at AI alignment at Meta. You can't make this stuff up. One quick comment on this. I think I talk about the contradiction of the AI market this year. On the one hand, you have this explosive growth of the open claw autonomous AI agents, and then you have the same agents deleting your inbox. So
Right.
the contradictions continue.
Yep. And the
All right,
last one,
Brian.
I think I have one last. Yeah. And this is where I think all of this is building up to, where we should be having conversations is really what is coming next is not necessarily the old SaaS world. We're not, we don't need to be talking about how people are going to be tarting up old SaaS apps for the next 20 years. I know they're going to be doing it, but that's not really the future. And what we aren't really discussing as much is what is it that comes next, as opposed to, I don't think it's going to be a SaaS apocalypse. We don't need to go doom and gloom. We need to look at this as more of an organic evolution of where technology is going to go. And the conversation really should be about what's that new wave coming out. I mean, we've seen this movie before. We saw the old on-prem kind of monolithic solutions give way to client server stuff, which then it gave way to a whole new group of, and. This is really where the conversation ought to be. And this is probably what's really behind all the stock market moves lately, is that the stock market, which is always looking several years into the future, is foreseeing an end of one era and the beginning of another. It's just that no one can quite define what the new era really looks like yet. That's it.
Yeah, if only the stock market wasn't doing it in such an irrational and ridiculous manner as to think you can replace IBM COBOL mainframes with some homemade Claude code at home. But anyhow, I don't think IBM should lose 10% of its market cap for that pseudo revelation. But anyhow, we don't have time to talk about that any further now, Brian, because we have Andreas Welsch. Andreas, you are about to join us. We're at the halftime show. Let's do a test of your audio. How you doing?
All right, doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, we picked a bunch of stories for our month that we thought would kind of fit in well with your thinking. So we'll get to that in just a sec. But first, we got to do your official bio slide. And by the way, Brian didn't do his usual trick of picking like weird photos of you from social media, so you should be happy about that.
Yeah, you
This
got
is
a
pretty
pretty professional slide here today. So anyway.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. There are hardly any weird photos of me on LinkedIn or on the internet. They're only the two that you see, the two headshots.
Yeah, indeed. And you've already published the AI Leadership Handbook, and now you've put out the Human Agentic AI Edge. And yeah, indeed. And congratulations, that came out actually on Wednesday, so that's very cool.
Yes.
And we're gonna get into that book, and I'm really looking forward to that.
If he gets to promote books, I'll promote some of mine.
Yeah. I mean, we could literally hold them up. I think I have a copy of Andreas's here. In fact, let's just switch layout for a sec. Yep, indeed.
Awesome.
Here we go. I do want to get to that, but you're not really on the show because of your book. Although I'm really looking forward to talking about your book because it's really interesting. You're on the show because you bring a very compelling, I think, view of AI in the enterprise, and you and I have done past show visits on your show together, really hashing things out, and it's been really fun to have this dialogue with you. I think you've done a great job of fostering that, not just with me, but with a lot of different thinkers. And I always enjoy those conversations. If you want to check out What's the Buzz, you can listen to those podcasts. And you and I are really interesting because I think I come at AI from kind of very edgy, kind of different manner, kind of balancing my curiosity with my skepticism and trying to dig deep. And then, you come at it from the projects that you've seen and been a part of. And then in the middle, we have a passion for getting projects right. And I think that's what's driven our dialogue. So thank you for that. And that's what gets you onto our show. Uh, Before we get into your book, and I do want to do that, did you want to comment anything on anything that jumped out to you? Because a lot of the stories were AI related. Did anything kind of hit with things that you're thinking about?
Whew. The question is, what do I not want to comment on?
Yeah.
So look, like so many of us, I've been following, like you said, the irrational ebbs and flows and dips and spikes in the stock market. And honestly, the thing that puzzles me is that, say, about 6 months ago, the talk was vendors. How are you making more money? How are you making money with AI? How are you being profitable? Who's using that stuff? Now we're waking up to the fact that, holy moly, this actually works. What do we do if this works, right? Does it chop away at the bits of the established players? But there's one thing that I would caution all of us to think about very clearly and deeply. While it is an evolution, and I see the same way as Brian does, software vendors have been really, really good traditionally making this evolution and finding ways to monetize it too. So yeah, fine. It's fewer seats that you'll be selling. Okay, so what? I'm sure there will be creative ways to monetize at the business object level, at the transactional level, at an outcome level. I'd be surprised if large vendors aren't already thinking about this or haven't already been thinking about this. So if you think software is going away, SaaS is going away, first of all, it's not happening overnight. It's not the dinosaurs, not a big bang. Even they didn't go extinct in a big bang. It's a shift. And I'm convinced that there are new models, new revenue models that vendors will be looking for. And also don't be surprised if at the end of the day, you actually pay more than you used to pay for your SaaS licenses or subscriptions.
I've been having some arguments with LinkedIn AI aficionados about this because they talk kind of condescendingly about systems of record. And one of the things I point out is that when's the last time that a system of record vendor just walked around saying we're a system of record? They've identified this issue a long time ago because they were already disrupted by analytics and planning vendors for the same reasons. So they've been working on trying to become more strategic for a long time. It doesn't mean they're all going to thrive and succeed, and there's going to be new players. But the other thing that I think you point out, which is important, is that they're sitting on a lot of data and also a lot of deterministic workflows. So anyway, I think it's a complicated story, and I wish the markets were moving a lot slower than they are.
Likewise, one other point to add here is, why do we have standard software? Why was standard software created in the beginning, or to begin with? Because companies and vendors realized that there are repeatable processes, repeatable problems. We don't need to reinvent the wheel at each and every company. Let's create a standard, build an ecosystem around it, take the same product because it applies to so many companies, and you have one company that manages this for you. So you don't have to do it. Sure, you can vibe code it and you can put hundreds or thousands of developers behind building your finance application, your HR application. But is it really where you should be spending your dollars? Or should you be investing those dollars in moving your business forward, creating new revenue streams, creating new business models, which I think is actually the better place. The second part is, why do we have enterprise software? Why do businesses work with software vendors? Because it's also a good part of risk mitigation. I need my process to run at a high level of accuracy and dependability, not just most of the time, but I don't really know when it doesn't work, kind of to the OpenClaw example that you shared earlier, and going in and trying to defuse a ticking bomb. So there's a lot about risk mitigation. There's a lot about the old one throat to choke idea. I don't like the visual appeal of that. But that to me flows into the discussion of SaaS is dead. Not really, it's evolving.
Nothing like being able to call someone on the phone, right? Instead of saying to your agent bot, why did you do that? I don't think your agent bot's going to give you a very satisfying answer to why did you just destroy my inbox. Shashi asked a related question for you, Andreas. Do you think people are paying attention to LLMs and chips and forgetting the pipes, Cisco, Lumen?
Look, it's the old gold rush story of selling shovels, but at the end of the day, you still want to have the golden ring or the golden wedding ring. It depends on where you focus today, but typically those jewelers making the golden wedding rings, we need them. That's where even more value is created, and where even more value is unlocked for those buying it. So don't dismiss it just because we're now talking about chips and data centers. That's the foundational stage. The other value, it's created on top.
Yeah, and I think the contradictions are what jump out at me right now, even within the same tools, right? So I can be using a tool that does something spectacularly valuable, and then it does something stupid a minute later. And Tracy pointing out these contradictions on LinkedIn says I'm a top applicant. I wasn't. Clicked on am I a fit? You're missing several skills. Yeah, I'm not a payroll consultant. Well, Tracy, sorry you got tempted by a job offer that didn't work out. Fortunately, I'm pretty confident in your skills. I think you're going to land on your feet no matter what happens to you. And Thomas says the argument is that the vibe writing of the software comes at almost zero cost. Yeah. Well, because someone's subsidizing that cost.
And it's a shift, right? It's not just the zero cost for writing the software. The question is who maintains it. And that's the old conversation and the old argument we've had all along. Sure, you can build it in-house, you build your in-house applications. But then the question is who's going to manage them when the intern leaves, when there's turnover. So
let's go there because I just sent a piece off to Diginomica this week where I compared all the AI stuff to an older wave where spreadsheets were going to solve all the problems. And spreadsheets had these advantages. Everybody had a copy of a spreadsheet software package on their laptop or at home or at work. And they were really cheap. You could build something quick and fast. And guess what? I might not use the same range of values when I calculated something that maybe Andreas did. And the stuff never stayed accurate, never was current. It never had an audit trail. It was full of errors. And we can go on and on. And I mean, yes, in some cases, yeah, if you need something quick and dirty that gets you sort of close to the right answer, a spreadsheet would work. But no one built in, to your point, Andreas, about where is the support? These were like fast things built that already come right out with huge amounts of technical debt because you got to have somebody that's going to maintain this stuff over time. So we're going to probably see an explosion of AI built agents and workflows and utilities. And we're going to find and quickly that a lot of them have problems and no one's standing around going to be able to fix all this stuff. It's a technical mechanics dream come true for full employment for fixing AI issues and putting in extra guardrails when they're needed.
I'm getting flashbacks of the whole citizen development movement.
Yeah.
I don't know about you.
Indeed. So look, we could have a SaaS versus AI discussion, but I don't want to go further in that right now. And the reason is that one of the things, Andres, that I found really compelling, and I haven't read your whole book yet, but I have gone through some of the summaries, is you actually make a coherent argument in the book that really, I think, advances the conversation. So I want to see if we can walk through a little bit of that argument. And by the way, folks in the audience, feel free to keep the comments and questions going. But I want to go through this a little bit because I think you're going to find this interesting. So one of the things that jumped out at me here, I'm just scrolling down to my summary here. I was going to ask you, why do we need another book on AI? Because there's a lot of them, but I don't think we need to ask that because you can address it if you want, but when we go into it, but I think you justified it. And let me read this sentence. At its foundation, the book argues that most organizations approach AI incorrectly. They focus on tools rather than work design. They deploy co-pilots without refining decision rights. They celebrate productivity gains while ignoring quality decay. The result is what the book calls AI work slop, faster output with unclear ownership and compounding risk. So let's stick with that problem statement for a little bit. That's a really, I think, well thought description of what companies are contending with. How did you arrive at that realization?
Great question. So I've been giving leadership trainings for some of the largest organizations on the planet for the last 20 or 21 months since I've gone independent. And one thing that's become clearer and that's also become more consistent across industries, across geographies of different levels of seniority is leaders saying, yeah, I am getting more information from my team. I'm getting more stuff, the reports, the early drafts. Can you take a look at this? The summaries. At one point, the senior manager said, hey, I have 10, 15 team members. They keep sending me all these meeting summaries with the action items. I don't need to know it. I don't need to know it right now. I don't need to know it from everyone. I don't need to know it 5 times a day. That's why we have one-on-ones. And even if I wanted to know it, I wouldn't even have the time to read all of this. So AI is becoming this easy button, right? Quite literally. So wash my hands in innocence. I'm done. I press the button. I use AI. Now it's your problem. Can you take a look at the draft? And you start reading it. And you're like, in this transformative age of AI, ooh, no, not again, right? And not from the same person again, because for the last 4 weeks, every time they sent me something, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. It wasn't specific. It wasn't authentic. It lacked teeth. It lacked depth. So likely they pressed the button and said, I am done. Now it's your problem. I call it labor shift because we're shifting the burden of reviewing something from the sender to the recipient. Now, we've all, or many of us have gone through some kind of email or email etiquette training years ago. And to me, the same applies again. One of the fundamental questions in these trainings that I had attended in my corporate career was, before you write something, before you send something, think about, does the recipient even need to know it? What do they need to know? Is that the right time? And do they need to know it to begin with? The same applies now. It just gets a lot easier and a lot faster to create something. So still be mindful, be cognizant of the fact that the other person might not need to know it, that you are not off the hook doing great work. That's one of my favorite phrases, and you'll find it in the book too, just because you have that easy button. So as leaders, we need to encourage and empower our team members to use AI by all means. I do that with my undergraduate students as well. But I think we also need to provide information for students, for professionals, for leaders to make informed decisions about when do I use it, how do I know that this is good, and how much do I still need to know to be able to determine, is this good, is this mediocre, is this great, and how do I get it from okay to really, really good that I can firmly stand behind it.
So on that note, Tracy's comment, check this out, the vibe writing. I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but now all the content posted everywhere sounds the same. I feel less connected to people because it doesn't feel like a person wrote it. I think that nails that down pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, come on. You have two AIs talking to each other. You have one AI writing the post and you have another one writing the comments. And why do we do it? Because we want to game the algorithm. We want to get more reach. We want to, appear in more people's feed. And what you see on social media, the same happens in HR. Tweak your resume to be the perfect candidate and the perfect fit for this job description. Well, guess what? Things like resume matching, you can throw them out the door. It's not
You
valuable
just hit on
anymore.
one of Brian's hot talking points with resume matching. Brian, what do you think of Andreas's core problem statement? We'll get to some of the solution thinking in a sec, but what do you think of the problem statement?
Well, the first thing that struck me as you were reading that was clearly that was not written by AI, because AI would have had exactly three subpoints underneath it all. And I could go on and on. I mean, I think Tracy or Tammy, somebody in here is talking on the discussion about where everything sounds the same. I have no interest in working with people where every input coming in my direction I'm getting from others is this blah, generic sameness that doesn't move the needle. In fact, I have to then read all this crap and figure out, is this really right or not? Is it complete? Is the first question. Have they really prioritized it for the business situation or problem at hand? And I got better things to do than, to your point, Andreas, people need to be on the hook for delivering outstanding results themselves. They need to own that. That's their part of the bargain, is they have to do that. And when I have people that work for me on projects and they try to hand in basically cribbed notes. This is like back in grade school. Somebody writes a book report based on a Classics Illustrated comic book they read that, which summarized like a 300-page book down to a 20-page comic book. And then they summarized that down to a 2 or 3-page essay. They didn't learn anything and they're not delivering anything of any value. So yeah, I'm right there with him on this. It was a well-written paragraph, whatever, that John read, though. So he picked a good one out of your book.
Yeah, and I like this notion of being responsible for your own AI slot. But Andreas, I also like how Tammy picked up on the notion that you aren't off the hook for great work. That might be like my takeaway from this whole discussion so far. I love that.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we keep coming back to so many recurring themes whenever we talk about AI. Whether it's about John's and my conversations about how do you actually get AI projects to be successful and why do they fail. Same thing here, right? We come back to these core ideas, core values, core things that have stayed the same no matter what the technology actually is. And you've never been off the hook to do great work. Now it just gets easier to pretend like you're doing great work. Press the button and be done. I don't need to sit here for an hour or two writing and thinking and looking up information and synthesizing. It does it for me. So there's a part of, or a component of understanding how these tools actually work that I think is important, that we need to get across as part of an AI literacy program or some sort of enablement. Um, so professionals know these tools are not infallible. They hallucinate all the things that many of us and many of you in the audience know already as well. But the less you know about AI, usually the more you believe it's got these superpowers and it's right and it's always right because it reads, it writes like a human. It understands what I'm saying. All these things. There's great research on that too. So I think we need to demystify it in some ways. And looking at it from a company point of view, again, as leaders, you're also not off the hook saying we give everyone Copilot, ChatGPT, or what have you, and we're done. That's our AI strategy. It's a part of it, but hopefully it's not your entire AI strategy. So tools need to go along with hands-on training to learn how do I use them, how do I use them well to make informed decisions and not create work slop.
So I want to walk everyone through one of your core arguments in the book that I think is really important. And this may feel like you're in an AI class for a couple minutes. So I apologize for that, but I think it's important that we go through this and use it as a basis for discussion. You make a very interesting distinction between uh, agents as digital employees versus tools.
Mhm.
I'm going to put my issues semantically with digital employees to the side right now because I think your distinction is quite interesting. And you talk about distinguishing clearly between productivity assistants and operational agents. And you talk about how agents function as digital employees when they do certain things like operating within guardrails and output against explicit performance criteria and so on. And then you have more on when they're not employees, which includes the kind of work slop we were talking about, generating drafts without process integration, uh, lacking a defined accountability structure, uh, but also some worthwhile use cases, right? Like brainstorming copilots. Nothing wrong with brainstorming. That's not necessarily work slop at all. But you're making a distinction between these two, and you say that this matters very significantly for projects and that you anticipate a divergence between the more superficial assistant adoption and deeper operational integration, which requires governance. And you ultimately conclude then that let me just find this. I'm going to read this. Uh, the insight for analysis is that market confusion stems from collapsing these lenses, and you insist that sustainable adoption means consciously applying both lenses when decision ownership and accountability remain human. So, in other words, you're arguing, correct me if I'm wrong, that we need to converge these into one framework and understand clearly the differences between them.
Absolutely. So I think that's the key part, right? I call it the dual lens principle. On one hand, yes, think about agents as digital employees. First of all, marketing of many vendors have been doing a good job peddling the narrative of agents
Yes,
as
they have.
employees, and you don't need to hire humans. That's why I picked it up. But on the other hand, um, they're also just software. They're not human, and it's important to call these distinctions out. So somebody was asking, link in the book to the book. So real quick, it's the Human Agentic AI Edge, and you can find it on humanagenticaiedge.com. It leads you to Amazon. So on the digital employee side, right? The thing that puzzles me is right now it's technologists making the decisions about the future workforce and workforce composition. They're the ones. We are the ones building agents because, hey, the technology is there. It's cool. It's exciting. Look at all the things that we can do now. But let's be honest, there are teams, there are organizations that have already figured that out for humans, human resources. And where are they? Not at the table, maybe not even in the building on these conversations. That was a big disconnect that I noticed already earlier last year. And I think on the Genomica, we did a piece when Moderna brought HR and IT under the HR leadership. And to me, that was a pivotal moment to think about this and say, yes, agents are digital employees when it comes to managing, governing them. They need a role. They need some kind of guardrails, knowledge. They need to abide by codes of conduct, in a sense, by industry standards. Think IFRS, if you have a finance agent, they need to know about this. Rewards. How do we know what an agent optimizes for? What's the reward function? For people, it's money. It's a salary increase, it's a bonus, it's maybe some stock options, these kind of things. What about the agent? Organization, things like an address book. We know who's in our business. We can call them if they have a phone. They have an email address. I can reach out to John. I can reach out to Brian, and I can ask a question. There's also an org chart, and I know what John and what Brian does. Today in a business, probably don't even know which agents I have that are connected to business systems. So there's risk, there's uncertainty, there are all these clouds in the sense of masking what is actually there. So we need
the reward function for an agent would be not turning it off when it screws up.
Yeah, right.
But I'm being a little sarcastic, but you're totally right. Brian, you are definitely well versed in the HR side of this mix. So what do you think of that?
So, yeah, I know all about that Moderna deal. And when I went looking around, I could only find 4 companies in the world that tried to merge IT and HR together. And now if we go, and I pointed out that there's a huge amount of re-engineering work that requires knowledge about what do you really know about what people do today. That's one giant knowledge gap that most HR departments don't really know. If they know anything at all, they have some old, out-of-date job descriptions that still don't capture the totality of what it is someone's doing on a day-to-day basis. So we got one, you talk about systems record at the top of the call. There's a amount of information that's just not present for people to use to actually re-engineer and rethink radically what work is going to be all about. AI vendors or people who want to do vibe coding, they might be able to cherry pick some very visible sore spots and find a way to use AI to maybe make something incrementally better. But I'm not expecting miracles out of this going forward. And I'm not, call me whatever names you want. I'm not necessarily sure that most HR departments have the people, the skills, and the budget to do some of this kind of radical rethinking of work.
I'd like to add one point. And I think between all the challenges, all the risks, there's an opportunity. And it's important to call out that opportunity. The opportunity I see is that businesses for a long time have been teaching their employees how to communicate in the values, the right words, the lingo. There's a set of cultural markers, if you will, corporate culture. But at the end of the day, how you communicate is still pretty much up to you. You take some of the things into account. But now, especially with customer-facing agents, I think there's a huge opportunity to have not just one agent, but many agents, multiple agents, actually adhere to your values, communicate in the way that you would like them to communicate. But what's happening? It's IT folks, it's technologists building individual agents, in many cases without that consistent vocabulary, if you will, or style guide or tone. And that again leads to a fragmented experience over time that I'm assuming. Now, if you were able to ground them in the same vocabulary, in the same tone, the same the same terminology, I think you could get a lot more consistency out of your customer-facing experience. I'm not seeing a lot of people or organizations talk about that yet. I think that's one of the opportunities. And again, why HR, IT, communication need to work together to define, hey, how do we want our agents to communicate? And then starts the lifecycle management of the information. It's not just a once and done thing where you upload your PDF, where you do a RAG, and then the agent has the information. No, how do we keep it up to date? Who owns it? When do we review it? How often? How do we know that it's still accurate? Right, the same things again that we've seen with chatbots, that we've seen with knowledge bases. Same thing, different color, different topic. Now it's agents, but it's a life cycle management of information that follows, grounded in the same information, but make sure you maintain it. Big opportunity.
I know it's real popular to kick old school application vendors around these days, but if they got one thing really right, that was effective dating of information. They always knew in their application, could always point to the most current, most accurate, most relevant kind of information because of that discipline. LLMs aren't necessarily known for being great about effective dating and understanding the implications of what information is being used or served up to users, because of what's in it.
Yeah. So look, we've talked about the digital employee side of the dual lens principle. The other one is it's just software, and I've had many conversations with friends in the industry who've insisted it's just software. It's just another kind of automation, another kind of AI. Sure, it's a little more autonomous. It can now work based on goals, fine, but it's just software. Again, I think it's important we take that duality of digital employees when it comes to managing and governing them and defining them. But yes, it's just software. An agent is just a piece of software, and you are responsible for your agent's actions. Almost like an intern that works for you. Sure, to some extent, they have some accountability, but at the end of the day, for the work products, you're responsible. If you don't review them before you send them up the chain, I think that's up to you, not to your agent or not to your intern. So responsibility, accountability, ethics, fairness, bias, those are all things we need to check as users. We're responsible. It's just a piece of software, but how we manage these pieces of software can very well follow the proven HR principles.
Well, it's interesting because it creates a different basis for discussion, and I think that's really helpful. Whether or not a company or an individual completely buys into your framing, I think it creates a different way of discussing this that gets at some of the heart of the challenges that customers are facing. Yeah, Greg, just real quick on AV. Greg, YouTube streaming live. I don't know. Unfortunately, I can't be a tech support person for you and also run the show. But at least you can listen. So sorry, but it will replay on YouTube as well. But it's not restricted to subscribers or anything like that. Anyhow, Andreas, where would you say your typical customer that you talk with, if they get stuck around getting more out of AI as per their investment, like say, for example, Goldman Sachs just came out with another report saying there's basically been no appreciable productivity gains around AI investments to date. If when customers are getting stuck, what do you think of the stuck point, and how can they get unstuck?
So the first stuck point was, what product should we roll out? I think many organizations are past that point, especially if it's around personal productivity. And I see two different camps. One is we've given a select group of users Copilot, so they can try it out. We learn, we roll it out to a larger part of the organization, but everybody tells me it's really expensive. The second part is we are not making such a big investment, but we want to also have better governance. So many of the customers I work with use a front end called LibreChat, which is your model garden. You can build agents, custom GPTs, and so on. But there, the cost of integration is a lot higher, right? Copilot's built into your Microsoft ecosystem, so very convenient, comes at a price point. The other ones, it's a fragmented experience. And that's what I hear. I need to copy things from Outlook into my LibreChat, and then I ask it to do something, but I cannot create PowerPoint, so I copy it back. So the point why I'm sharing this, and that's in part large organizations, multinational organizations. You think you're saving a few bucks by not going with an integrated solution? Doesn't have to be Copilot. There are many others where AI is integrated. You think you're saving a few bucks while you're actually shifting the cost, again, back to labor, because there's a person sitting in a chair that now has to do the swivel chair integration that we've also known for a long time. So again, on paper, you're saving license costs, but actually time savings, the things that you're after, you're kind of killing that part in a negative way because you're asking your people to spend more time. So either way, if they've rolled it out, then the question is, how do we get our people to use it? Because we're making the investment, whether it's $3 or $30 per user per month, how do we get them to use it well? And I think there, the hands-on training from simple prompting to building agents and GPTs is really helpful. And what excites me is when I see leaders figure things out on their own. Between modules week by week, they come back and say, "Hey, I pulled in some customer data and production data and order data, and I asked my assistant, my AI assistant, to correlate the data and tell me which customers order from us multiple times a week, the same lot sizes. How can we consolidate this? Can we have a conversation with the customer and say, instead of ordering 2 or 3 times 100 parts a week, can you order 3 by the end of the week, and we work out some better terms and conditions for you, give you a discount, so we don't need to change the material and send 3 trucks your way." Those are the things, again, personal productivity, where it clicks for leaders using these tools, and they get me really excited because it's tangible. Where I think there's a lot of potential, again, if you think of this as 3 concentric circles, we're at the innermost circle, personal productivity. They might not be the most impactful use cases, right? We're not talking about millions of dollars in savings, but what it does is it helps people get more familiar with the technology, warm up to having an AI, having an assistant, learning how to use these tools. And then when it clicks, they can think about, well, where can I use this and where else can I use this? So from there, like I said, it's in the book too. The next circle is operational efficiency. What are things that my team does on a regular basis? What are tasks, what are processes we run through? And how could we streamline them, automate them with the help of AI? And then the next one, the last one, is strategic differentiation. So with the data that I have and having agentic capabilities in my workflows or building agents, what new products, what new services can I offer, or how can I improve the one that I already deliver? Okay, that was the jingle.
Wind chime alert, huh? Brian, what do you think? Where are we?
Well, I think we're going to have to be saying goodbye to Andreas here in a minute, but I also think we could probably keep the conversation going for another hour or two easily. I like the idea of looking at this. You used the concentric rings model, but I boiled it down to just 2 levels. To me, there is a lot of what people are using this stuff for. It's just incremental improvements. There's a whole bucket load of things people are doing. And a lot of application software vendors, they like to sprinkle a little agentic here, a little algorithmic AI love somewhere else, and a little generative AI in another part of a piece of a process. I get it, but the other end of it is the really transformative stuff. And I'm not sure a lot of companies fully understand what the state of the art really is, as well as the state of the potential downsides that they have to manage. So there's a whole new set of risk and everything else that have to be, people have to learn, and that's just the way it is. But anyway, I like the model.
I want to pile on for a sec because I haven't blown a gasket yet in this episode. I'm getting close now. It's not. It's nothing personal to either of you, but the thing that is really bothering me right now is not anything you've articulated, Andreas, but it's the overall failure of imagination that I'm seeing, which is why I wanted to pile on to Brian's comment. And I think it's really hypocritical to hear companies like Accenture talk about outcomes, but then reward promotions and not based on enforced use of tools. I got news for you. If you have to force people to use your tools suck. Like the way to do this is to create safe experimental environments where employees can surface great ideas and great use cases, or co-innovate with trusted vendors on those same use cases. And the coolest stuff I've seen in the last 6 months mostly came out of co-innovation work. It wasn't like, oh, you have to take baby steps with these boring email generation tools. No, like dive in with some creative use cases. And I even see that in our own team at Diginomica, where they will come up with really cool things to tie a bunch of analytics stuff together. Now, granted, we don't have the pressure of enterprise scale and governance in quite the same way, so it's a little bit different. But the point is, you see the spark there. And what I'm missing from this conversations around AI mostly is the spark. It's mostly about like, Jack Dorsey just laid out 4,000 people, like, let's get rid of the people. This is awesome. But then you contrast that, and smart companies like IBM and Walmart are actually staffing up. But the point is, I really want to see a shift in this conversation a little bit towards more imaginative thinking, which is not to say that operational efficiency in this economy isn't important. It totally is.
No,
Okay.
but I think
Let me respond on that.
yeah.
I get these requests, I'm sure all of us do, on the discussion, chat and on this call, from people who want us to follow them on LinkedIn and particularly subscribe to their newsletter. If you ever look at these newsletters, you could tell somebody asked an AI tool, can you write 600 words on some subject, and you get this really generic deal. Why do I want to read anything that an AI tool wrote when I wasn't looking for it? And I know it's going to be old news because by the time it gets packaged. Now, some of this is the fault of marketers. I get it. But to your point, John, there is not one iota of a spark in there. You could do all this AI generated content and it's just noise. It's just crap. And I don't want it. I don't want to read it. And I think so much less of the people, the marketers, the companies, and everything else that promote this kind of stuff as if they invented something when they didn't do anything at all. And yeah, the spark is just not there. If the goal is to create tinder that ignites a fire within a client, this AI generated dreck is not the content that does that.
Andreas, this is always what happens at our shows. So
It's good.
is how
Awesome.
it goes.
Otherwise it's boring. Otherwise it would be a vendor sponsored feature.
Yeah, unfortunately, vendors won't come close to this show, and that's intentional. No vendor sponsorships.
Yeah, so look, I think it needs both. We've been in this phase of machine learning driven in machine learning and innovation, lots of co-innovation, and it was difficult imagining what's possible, right? And even if it wasn't imagining what's possible, it was still difficult getting it into the organization. The same is true now with Gen AI, with agentic AI. So personally, I'm grateful that we are getting people to warm up to the idea that here's AI that can do something for you, and then think bigger and bigger. I'm totally with you that it's incremental, but we also know that many of these large organizations that have the AI programs are really struggling even getting small changes into the organization, right? So I think there lies the fine line between, sure, what is possible, but what is actually practical and what can you actually do? So somewhere in between is where I see things are happening right now. And I'm very optimistic that by showing people how you can use this, they will keep thinking and will see the opportunities. And it's a lot more organic than many of the moonshots that have traditionally failed because they were not connected to the business or they were so big that we ran into so many different problems along the way.
Indeed, I want to close this out, but I want to wrap with two leadership things. One from your book, and then we'll move on to the final part of the show. By the way, Tracy, see you later. Thanks for coming. Andreas, two things. One is I talked with a customer last week and was asking them about the dealing with fears and change around AI in the organization, and they said something really revealing. I thought they said 300 of their employees are working hard on data science and AI, and they're pretty engaged, and they have a good sense of what's going on. He said the rest of our employee base, like 7,500, they're terrified, and they're all reading the headlines, right? And these things are crazy. I mean, every day now there's some other stuff. I mockingly referred to the Anthropic IBM thing or whatever, and then there's another Anthropic thing involving autonomous weapons in the Pentagon this week. But the point is, there's a lot going on that could scare people. And I think that's a huge leadership challenge inside of organizations is moving past fear into something more sane and useful. And then the other thing I wanted to hit was directly from your book. I really like this line: "Creating is easy. Filtering and prioritizing are the new bottleneck for most leaders." So give us your kind of parting words. You can riff on that or something else you want to.
So look, when AI is not only the proverbial but the physical easy button, it's simple to create. It doesn't take a lot of effort. Creating in itself is fast. It's cheap. Like you said, cost gravitates towards zero. But the quality is still what's needed. Your unique insight, your expertise, your company's expertise. If you're out on your own, if you're a consultant, if you do some kind of professional services, people are paying you for your expertise, not just for writing a prompt and sending them something. So again, it comes back to the fact that you're not off the hook doing great work, but as you're getting work from other people and work products, it gets a lot harder to discern, is this right? Is this accurate? Is this complete? Is this authentic? Do we need this? Is this actionable, right? So you need to do a lot more thinking to filter signal from noise and to prioritize, even within the signal, what are the things that I still need to look at. So I hope you find a lot of value in the Human Agentic AI Edge. You can buy it on Amazon. It's actually a bestseller in the 3 categories that's in. So I'm super excited and proud. There's a launch deal going on, 99 cents for the ebook, $9.99 for the paperback. I'm sure this is applicable in many of your businesses. And do connect, reach out, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be on the show today.
Thank you. All right. Well, appreciate you joining us. That was a really interesting conversation. I'm sure we will be continuing it in another form at some point. And you're welcome to hang out backstage if you want. We're going to wrap up. All right, Brian, we are in the very, very final phases of our show.
I don't think we said anything about AI. I must have missed that.
Yeah, any of you that has AI fatigue, sorry, we hit the wrong show this week. This actually was awesome. I mean, there were so many whiffs this month. I mean, Brian, you already had the great one on the meta alignment open claw thing, but this one with Sam Altman was beautiful. Sam making the point that humans use a lot of energy too, is a way to kind of pull us back from our critique of the data centers, making utility bills expensive for the typical person. Hey, Brian, quit complaining about data center build out because you use a lot of energy too, man, and so do the other humans on this planet. And Sam Altman wants you to know that.
Thanks, Sam. Just send us your address and I'll mail you my Duke Energy bills. Since you clearly have money to build data centers, you've got money to pay for my rising electric cost over here. Anyway.
The really fascinating thing about that is that there's a really interesting study of human learning baked into what you would call evolutionary priors. And actually, human energy around training for life has been distributed very efficiently at a lot of levels across millions of years of evolution. So in that regard, Sam's hitting on a really interesting argument, but he's not the right person for that, Brian. He should be apologizing to people for screwing up their utility bills for his pursuit of AGI, a pursuit that's not going that well at the moment, I would point out. So something that inspires and creates value. Brian, I'm missing your dog, man. This is no substitute for your dog.
My dog is a real, an amazing critter, but it's fascinating. We talked a little bit about personal productivity towards the end of Andreas's commentary, and I'm always looking for things that make my life and my job easier, better, and so forth. I'm not plugging this. I'm just pointing out. I got one of these. Cost about $100. It's got a tiny little gray button on the back that you just push, and it'll record and upload not only the audio file, it'll do the transcription. It downloads it to your cell phone or your laptop. It does all that brainlessly. It's really changed how I approach vendor briefings and user conferences. Works extremely well. But more than anything else, I've noticed now that almost every industry analyst is doing something that's live transcription using AI to capture things in the moment. And to the point of just a minute ago where you were about to go really ballistic, John, it doesn't always tell me where the spark is in a vendor's commentary. I still have to figure that out when I go through the transcription. But it does save me a lot of time. So as a personal productivity tool that just happens to have AI behind it, I like that. I like that a lot.
I've been thinking about writing a blog post on Diginomica about a couple of attempts I made to have AI fix certain problems I was having, and then how I ended up falling back on more deterministic automation instead, the big one was email. I tried a bunch of things for AI to fix my inbox. It was becoming really unmanageable, and I ended up solving it with by building 250 new email filters into my Gmail instead. Now, it took me some time, but the thing is, it friggin' works. Whereas the AI couldn't sort for crap and couldn't prioritize for crap. So anyway, it's kind of interesting, and you just never know. I mean, it doesn't mean that AI is bad. I love my AI transcripts just like you are enjoying yours. So I use them all the time. But anyway, I think it's kind of interesting how it's not always the right solution for every problem. But anyhow, something that inspires. I mean, I guess for me, it's mostly like having a vigorous chat like this with all our peeps in it, chiming in. Thank you all today. You were great. I think the only way we can kind of make sense of this is to do it together, have some fun, be critical, and do it as a community. So I appreciate y'all out there joining us for this. And Brian and I are glad to have you, and we'll definitely be doing it again in a month or so. And I'll make sure to try to invite all of you who came today. So thanks a lot. Brian, any final comments?
No, just thanks. My thanks as well. Thanks everybody for being here. Makes a nice way to wrap the week. Thank you, folks.
Indeed. Catch you later, y'all. Enjoy your weekend.